I'm Jeff Eichler.
And I'm Kirsten Rickert, and we are the hosts of the Getting Unstuck podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
It was difficult to be thrown into that situation where I feel like there was no break and I had to keep going, and there was a lot of pressure put on me from administration to be a certain type of teacher. So it was very difficult.
Welcome to the Burned In Teacher Podcast. I'm Amber Harper, and the educators on this podcast are brave enough to share their stories of burnout with the world. On BIT, we get real, we get honest, and we take action. Action against the burnout with stories from burned out teachers, advice from experts, and actionable steps you can take today to beat the burnout and become a happier, more fulfilled human being. Let's get started. You know, during my 12-year teaching career, it seemed like there was always something throwing off my lesson plans, mindset, or goals. And when I began to burn out and tried to talk about it, all I heard was join the club, go for a walk, have a glass or 3 of wine. This is just the way it is. The current challenges you're facing, distance learning, new technologies, higher expectations, discipline issues, a personal crisis, a global pandemic, all of these challenges make your everyday life seem unmanageable. Until now. Teacher burnout has been hacked, and the book is here. In Hacking Teacher Burnout, I share my 8-step process that shines a light on burnout as an opportunity for growth and change. And in it, I empower you to become burned in, a fulfilled, happy, efficient, and effective teacher in the classroom and in life. You'll learn the steps you can take action steps based on your burnout type. Feel ready for the next challenge. Thrive, not just survive, personally and professionally. Feel ready for and learn how to grow through your burnout, and so much more. Hacking Teacher Burnout is here and ready for you to order on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com, so go check it out. Or go to hackingteacherburnout.com to learn more and place a bulk order for your staff. Take a deep breath because you're about ready to do something big for your burnout. Burn on. Hey, what's up, Burned In Teachers? Welcome to the Burned In Teacher Podcast. This is one part burnout and all other parts action, inspiration, and support for teachers dealing with burnout. This is episode 83, and I'm your host, Amber Harper. I empower burned out teachers to believe that they deserve and can achieve a happier and more fulfilled career and life with my 8-step Burned In process. This episode, you guys, if you did not hear the pre-roll, I want you to go back and listen to it. I'm telling you, the things that she is saying at the beginning of this episode, how much does that resonate with you right now? This episode is for those teachers out there that are burned and unbalanced and are at a stage 0, 1, 2, or 3 of burnout. Because this is for those teachers out there that have so much to do, are telling themselves the story that this is just the way it is and this is what good teachers do, or are being sucked into a culture, especially while teaching here in the pandemic, that says to you, you must be working all the time. You have to do all of the things and you have to do them this way, and you must be working 12 hours a day in order to do it well. So Naomi and I are here to tell you that that is not true. If you're wondering what I'm talking about as far as stages and burnout type, go ahead and jump on over to burnedinteacher.com/burnout quiz. Take my 6-question, 3-minute or less quiz that will help you to talk proactively about your burnout. It's going to help you identify your burnout type. And then you're going to get in your inbox my shiny stages ebook that will help to walk you through what stage you are at, how burned out are you, and what you can say, do, and think to move to the next stage. And I'm telling you, this episode could not be more perfect to follow last week's episode where we talked about rocks, pebbles, and sand, and how going into a brand new quarter of every year is a new chance to refocus and recenter on the most important things. Now, Naomi, who I interview here, She taught in Denver for over 7 years. She's now a stay-at-home mom with her 2 babies at home, but she still continues to serve educators by having a Teachers Pay Teacher store, as well as blogging for teachers. And let me tell you, online resources are really important right now, right? So another reason that I love this episode is because I'm talking about a teacher who did choose to leave education because she had the desire to stay home with her babies, but how being a burned in teacher is not about keeping you in the classroom. It's not about getting you out of the classroom. It's about choosing the way that you want to serve in this life that you have and going with it and taking your next best action steps. You'll hear Naomi talk about how much she loved planning engaging activities for her kindergartners and how she brought that love into a different space, learned and tried new things. And because of that, she's able to do both. She's able to be at home with her babies, but also serve teachers and students in a different way through Teachers Pay Teachers. I love her story. It's so inspirational, and it's all about making a decision and taking different action to get different results. Now, I have some homework for you today. I want you to listen for 2 things. The first thing I want you to listen for is how teachers reacted when she decided to dump the belief that you have to work 12 hours a day in order to be a good teacher. I also want you to listen for the part where I help her to reframe the way that she talks about herself as a teacher who sells online teaching resources. Now, I know how precious your time is, and I cannot wait for you to hear our interview, so let's dive in. Naomi, welcome to the Burned In Teacher podcast. I'm so grateful you're here with us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be doing this with you.
I am too. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about how you got into teaching, how long you taught, what it is that you did, and leading up to what it is that you're doing now.
Sure. Well, I always had wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. And so I always just kind of had a passion for it. So I went to UNC here in Colorado, the University of Northern Colorado, and I spent 4 years working in a classroom as part of my we were part of a cohort where you had to be a para and work in a classroom and then kind of get together and talk about it. So I did that for about 4 years, and then I taught for about 3 years inside the classroom. I taught kindergarten. Mm-hmm. So overall, I've worked with kindergarten through 2nd or 3rd grade, but the majority of the time with kindergartners.
So how long did you teach?
So I actually taught by myself for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then I was when I was a para, the last 3 years of being a para, I was co-teaching different subjects with the teacher, and I was pulling small groups for interventions.
So what was your experience as a teacher? How did it go? Thinking about being a first-year teacher, I remember years 1 through 3 so much because there was a lot of growth that happened in my own professional life during that time. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so I feel like any teacher that goes into it really doesn't know what to expect. I mean, especially if you haven't been in a classroom before. So I went into it. I was very, very excited. But my first year was very, very, very difficult. And a big part of that, I think, is the culture around teachers having to give all of themselves. So when I started teaching in my first year, basically most of the teachers at the school that I was working at, they came in at like 6 o'clock in the morning, they left at like 6 o'clock at night. And, I had never been a teacher before, on my own with my own classroom. I wanted so badly to succeed, and I wanted so badly to be good at what I do. And so I thought that that's what you had to do. And so there I was, going in early, staying late. I mean, it was my entire life, and I did have a couple outside circumstances. I had some physical issues that I had been dealing with, but overall, I mean, it was hard. It was really, really hard, and I know teaching is never easy, but it was difficult to be thrown into that situation where I feel like there was no break and I had to keep going, and there was a lot of pressure put on me from administration to be a certain type of teacher. So it was very difficult.
So with the other teachers that you said working from 6 to 6, so 12-hour days, 5 days a week, maybe 6 or 7, who knows? You said that was kind of the cultural expectation, but what were the teachers' beliefs? What was their attitude about it?
I mean, a lot of them, there was a handful of them that kind of felt like this school was their home and they didn't really feel like they needed a different outlet. But I feel like a lot, like that was very, very seldom. That was very few.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of the teachers, it was an environment where they would complain about being tired and and things like that, I wish someone had told me, to beware of those things. But, I feel like a lot of them were almost in the same boat that I was, where it was kind of, they were doing it out of expectation.
So did you have a mentor? Did you have anybody that you felt that you could go to ask for the support that you needed and to get some clarity on how to manage your time?
Yeah. So at the school that I worked at, we all had teacher coaches, and they were all either teachers or administration that worked in our school.
Mhm.
And so they would coach us and observe us and things. However, the kindergarten team, um, this was a brand new school. One of the teachers had been there the first year, and myself and another teacher were brand new to the school. So it was a
Mhm.
little bit like still kind of getting things up and running anyway. But the kindergarten team had the principal as their coach. So that would be the person that I felt like I needed to go to. At first, I didn't want to go to her because I didn't want it to seem like I couldn't handle the job. Like I just kind of wanted to keep going, doing what I was doing, working 7 days a week, that whole thing. Eventually, I did go to her, and I, just told her, if you come in to observe me, there are just things I think that you should know. The way my burnout affected me was through fatigue mostly. I was so tired all the time. And part of it was that I wasn't sleeping well. But I was really, truly fatigued to the point where, I could barely keep my eyes open some days, and she kind of just was like, oh, well, one of our teachers had mono last year, so it might be that, like, just, it's fine. It'll be fine. Like, you'll get over it, and to me, I was just like, I did. Especially after that conversation, I thought that, what if something's wrong? What if it's physical? I went to doctor after doctor trying to figure out what was wrong. It took me a long time to figure out what it was, and that it was burnout.
It sounds like she really normalized it. Like, this
Mhm.
is just the way it is, honey.
Yeah, right, right. And
That makes
that's
me
kind of
so
part
sad.
of it. Like part of that, especially that first year, was a big struggle of wondering, is this the nature of the beast? Is this teaching? Is this, the school I'm teaching at? Is this
Mm.
the administration I'm teaching under? As a first year teacher, part of you doesn't know if it's normal or not, because
Right.
you haven't done it before. So
And
that
you've never
that
done it
was
anywhere else.
right. Exactly. Right.
So this was all happening in year 1.
Yes.
So you came back year 2. Was it
Yes.
the same thing year 2? Did it get worse? Did you learn some things? Did you do anything different? Tell me a little bit about that if you can remember.
Yeah. So it got a lot better year 2.
Okay. How
The
so?
the re well, um, I wasn't tired. I felt more in charge of my job. I felt more in charge. I don't know, in charge, but I felt more confident in what I was doing. So year 2, I had finally, through my own research, had realized, that burnout is a real thing. Because I had gotten told before that it's kind of one of those things that's in your head. Like, people like to say that depression, anxiety, things like that are controllable in your head. And I think a lot of people say that about burnout too, that it's a mental issue. that you can just fix, and I don't believe that.
Good.
But it took a lot of self-research and like researching online to figure out what that was. So once I started to figure that out towards the end of the school year on year one, and then I started to do things to change it. And so by the time summer came and went, I felt more prepared going into my second year. I knew what the school was like. I knew what the administration was like. And I kind of knew that I needed to take care of myself. And I figured out ways to do that. I will say that, I found out that summer that I was pregnant with my son.
Mm.
So that was a big motivator for me to kind of, I think teaching is a profession where people are expected to be martyrs a lot of the time, and I kind of put myself and my son first because I knew it ended up being a high-risk pregnancy, but I kind of knew that, we came first and my child came first, and my administration shouldn't expect anything more than that. They shouldn't expect me to sacrifice that for the job.
Can I ask you to go a little deeper into that expectation to become a martyr? Was it clear and stated explicitly that this is the expectation? And maybe they didn't use the word martyr,
Right.
but that it was expected of you to give of yourself 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, or because I deal with this a lot, I talk about this a lot with teachers in my community. Is it the expectation that we have on ourselves as high achievers?
Yeah.
How was
Well,
that for you?
To be honest, I think it's a little of both.
Mm-hmm.
I am someone that very much like wants to do very well and wants to exceed expectations. And, my first year, there was certain expectations that were placed upon me going in. They were telling all the other teachers how good I was at classroom management, and they were saying like how good I was at certain things. And I felt like, well, now I have to live up to that, like I have to do really, really well.
You were already doing well, but you up to the
Right. But I was like, I can't, there's no room for error. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I felt like. So yes, a lot of that, was me wanting to be that overachiever. And I think a lot of teachers just naturally have a personality that goes that way.
Absolutely.
But I will say that, and like I said, I don't know what it's like everywhere. But I will say that, I do think in not so many words, it was said that it was expected in ways where kind of if you didn't do this or if you didn't meet a certain expectation, well, you had all weekend to work on it sort of thing, and it's like, well, that's not in my contract hours, but I feel like as a first year teacher, you're not going to say that, you're just going to go ahead and take the weekend to do it, and it's just hard to be aware of those expectations and what taking all that time for work and not yourself is doing to you until you get to that point.
So what did you change? You said you went into year 2, you knew you were pregnant with your son, you knew that you were not going to be a martyr and you were going to put yourself and your child first, which is a fantastic place to come from. Tell me what changes you made.
So I kind of went through this mental change where, first off, I was giving myself credit for being good at what I do. I know that I'm good at what I do. I'm confident going into the school year that the kids are going to learn. The kids, just because I put myself first doesn't mean, I'm not putting the kids anywhere. Like, my job is very, very important to me. It is a passion. And I think that's what it's like for most teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of went in with a different mentality of, instead of having to meet expectations or impress anyone, it was mainly just what is happening in my classroom and what do I need to do for those children. And you still go above and beyond at times, but I learned to listen to my body because, I think I mentioned fatigue was a huge factor of my burnout. When I get very stressed or burnt out, it affects me physically. I get sick more often. I get very, very tired, things like that. And so I kind of took time during the summer to focus on, why did I get into teaching? What are the things I like about it? What happened this past year that was holding me back from those things? I was miserable. I was depressed. It was terrible, and I started to question, like, is this the right profession for me? Like, is this what I should be doing? And so I kind of just did a big deep dive into my own mental health. And, I would make lists of like things that I enjoyed about teaching, and then the things that like were really making me miserable. And so what I changed was taking care of myself in general. I was eating better. I was trying to find time to like at least take my dog for a walk or get out or something. I was drinking lots and lots of water. I was going to bed at a reasonable time. But the biggest thing that I think that I did that really turned it around was I allowed myself to believe that I could still be a good teacher by getting to school 15 minutes early and leaving at 4 o'clock when my contract hours ended, and not working on the weekend. And that was huge because even teachers that I was working with that have been working for 5-10 years were still doing those things. And I kind of gave myself permission to do those things and still telling myself that I can still be good at what I do. I can still be a good teacher and work within my contract hours.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel like, honestly, I also gave myself permission to speak up. If I feel like I'm not getting enough time in my contract hours, I feel like that's something that I need to work out with my administration, because they should be allowing me that time they shouldn't be taking up all of that time, like our planning time and stuff with meetings or what have you, and so if I'm not getting that time during my contract hours, I feel like it's important to speak up. And it was important for me to say, hey, look, like, I think I'm pretty efficient. I'm not like slacking. I'm not like not planning during planning time.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I need from you, So I think that, a lot of factors, but the biggest thing is just advocating for myself and understanding that you don't have to work yourself dead tired, to be good at what you do and to care still about what you do.
I love every single thing that you just said. It's so validating that it all starts with your beliefs and your decision
Mm-hmm.
to make those changes.
It really does. Like I said, I feel, a huge part of it is just mentally believing that, like, just because you go into a school where things are set a certain way and a lot of teachers are doing things a certain way, doesn't mean that doesn't mean it will necessarily work for you. Right. And
So, sorry, you just
that's
triggered
okay.
a really good question that I have. So, you said that it was sort of just the expectation, the culture that teachers came at 6 and left at 6, give or take.
Right.
So did they treat you any different that second year when you essentially created boundaries around your time?
Right.
How did that go?
To be honest, I don't think anyone even noticed.
Mhm.
Like, I think I was doing that because I thought I had to do it the first year. And where we were in our building, the kindergarten team was in a little pocket at the end of the like school. So we weren't really there out in front of everyone a lot anyway. So I don't know that anyone would notice when you got there and when you left, as long as you were there, when you needed to be.
Mhm.
Overall, though, I don't think anyone noticed. And to be honest, I think it had more of a positive impact because one of my teammates had been teaching for 5 or 6 years at that point, and now she's the same way. Like, I think that she was able to see, she would get there early and stay late, and she had always kind of done that. And granted, she wasn't struggling with like burnout or anything necessarily, but I've watched her, she's still teaching at the same school, and I've watched her become more of a person that's like, oh, I'm going to get there on time. I'm going to leave at 4. I'm not doing anything over the weekend. And she's actually working on her team as a first-year teacher now, that actually used to work in my classroom as a para. And she tells her, don't do anything over the weekend. Or if you do, set a timer and like, don't do anything when that timer goes off, no matter what, you know, like,
Yes.
so I think it had more of a positive impact actually on teammates around me, realizing that maybe you don't have to do those things and you can still be good at what you do.
Hmm. Love that. Such great,
Yeah.
wise advice. So going into year 3, was it much of the same?
It,
Because I know then after year 3, then you left education for right now
Mhm.
to be at home with your
Yep.
kiddos,
Yep.
correct?
Yeah. So year 3 was a lot of the same. Luckily, you know, the thing is that I still kept doing the things that I was doing year 2, and really the whole burnout thing in year 1 just had such an impact on me that it's just constantly kind of sitting there in the back of my head during year 2 and year 3, where it's like, if I start to feel like I'm doing too much, or if I start to feel overwhelmed, I know what to do. Like, I know to stop, I know to take a break. I mean, you know, I would take time for myself, I would take walks, I would come home at night and be like, look, I need to take a bath, I need to like have alone time, you know, whatever it was. I kind of just knew I it wasn't until that happened that I really understood self-care, and I really understood the importance of self-care. And self-care can mean so many different things.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of people think it means like getting your nails done or taking a bath, and that's not necessarily true. It could be working out, could be, I mean, anything that you feel like you're doing to care for yourself.
It could also be that advocation, those
Right.
conversations that you need to have
Absolutely.
with your
Yeah.
administrators when you feel like your time is being taken from you too often. It's
Right.
inevitable that you're going to have meetings during your planned periods, but
Right.
when it's happening every week, time after time,
When
I
you
can
start
definitely.
feeling like you can't do anything that you're supposed to be getting done during your contract hours, and you have to take your work home with you on a regular basis, that is where I feel like it's not okay. I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to take your work home with you, if that's who you are, if that's what you want to be doing, you know, that's a whole other thing. But if you feel like you're doing it out of obligation and it's becoming, you know, something in your life that's literally making you sick, like, that's not okay. And it's so important to advocate for yourself.
So when you did advocate to your administrators, I'm assuming that you did have these conversations. How did you approach it and what was their reaction?
You know, I had a different coach going into the next year, and I first what I did was I sent her. She had been a teacher previously, like at the school, and then she stopped teaching to become more of like a leader, a teacher coach. So I went into the year and I emailed her, and I kind of just told her my experience, and I told her things that were happening, and I told her things were happening in my life, like the burnout experience, because I wanted to lay it all out there, and I wanted to tell her, you know, this is what happened. I don't intend on that happening again, you know. And honestly, it was nice having someone. I mean, I think we can all understand that it can be intimidating to go talk to the principal, to advocate for yourself and ask for certain things. So it was nice kind of having a go-to between where I would kind of talk to this coach about it, you know,
Mhm.
and then she would go and talk to the principal about it. And I mean, I had a great relationship with our principal and everything. But it was nice to kind of be able to like have someone that was just a teacher that kind of can relate more and things like that. So it was received very well. And to be honest, I think that a lot of times when people are afraid to advocate for themselves, it's actually received a lot better than they expect it will be.
Mhm.
I think it comes with a lot of respect from administration and people that, you know, as long as you do it in a respectful manner and you're just telling them that the reasons that you're doing that is so that you can perform better at your job. I think it's met with respect a lot more often than people expect it to be, you know, and it was met with respect. You know, there were times where that coach would be like, okay, I promise this meeting will only be 20 minutes. And if it's not, you can leave at the 20-minute mark, sort of thing, you know, like where I'd be like, hey, I really need this time, you know? So I think that was really great. And like I said, I think, you know, at least people like me, I get very intimidated. I get very anxious sometimes, you know, going and asking for things and advocating for myself. And it's something that I still have to push myself to do. But I think that the results end up being way more positive than I ever imagined them to be, you
Well,
know?
we tell ourselves these stories, these really negative
Yep.
narratives about what's going to happen if,
Yeah.
if I do this scary thing, this horrible thing is going to happen.
But it's
And
the worst case scenario of this happening.
totally.
That's for sure going to happen.
And typically it doesn't.
Right, right.
And if it does, then you really learn about what your next steps need to be.
Absolutely.
And whether or not that is the place for you.
Right. Had that not been received well, I mean, I don't know that there would have been a year 3 at that school, it's exactly what you said. I mean, either way, when you advocate for yourself and ask for those things, no matter how it goes, it is a learning situation.
Paying attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about year 3. I know that you have a Teachers Pay Teachers store.
I do.
Am I saying that correctly? I'm not.
Yes.
So you clearly cleared up enough time to start this store. Did that happen in year 3? I'd like to hear that story, because here's what I want to make sure. If anybody is new to the podcast, you've never heard me say this before, Burned In Teacher is not about making teachers feel like they have to be content where they are. It's about you deciding what you want and empowering you to believe that you deserve and can achieve whatever it is that you want. So if you wanted to stay in kindergarten, you wanted to love it again, you don't want to leave, but you know something has to change. Or if you want to give yourself permission to make a big change, whether it be a transition to another school district or another school building, another grade level, or another job within education, or in fact, leaving education for the time being, whether permanently or temporarily, that you are empowered with the belief that you are worthy of making that decision and helping you along that path. So Burn In Teacher is not about getting you out of the classroom either. It's about whatever it is that you want to do. But I love that something inside of you said, I want to do this. This is something I want to try out. So tell me a little bit about that. And then what did cause you to make the decision to leave?
So, during year 3 is, I had just had a baby, and
was this baby 1 or baby 2?
Baby 1.
Okay.
That was the baby that I was pregnant with the summer after year 1.
That's right. I apologize. Yes.
That's okay. That's okay. So I had my baby. I was still sticking to, really putting myself first, taking care of myself. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of that whole "you can't pour from an empty cup" quote. I think it's very, very true. So I was still doing all those things. But I'm going to be honest, there were a lot of things about education, like working in education, that school did not teach me or prepare me for. And, there was a lot that was still very overwhelming for me. And there was a lot of, it got to a point for myself where I felt like it had to do more with politics or parents or, things like that than it did my passion, which was the kids, and the lessons and being there in person without thinking about anything else, being all the way there with them. Right. So, again, I've still only really, I've been at a couple schools, but I really only taught at this school. And so I was very much like, is this the nature of the beast? Like, is this the school, whatever? But then I realized, my teammate and I would sit and plan curriculums because, we would use like a baseline of the curriculum that we were given, but we felt like it wasn't engaging enough for kindergarten. It was written for higher grades, and so we would sit down and plan. We were very efficient at it. We really liked it. And I really enjoyed coming up with these engaging hands-on lessons. And so I just started putting them on Teachers Pay Teachers. And I figured out that that's something that I really like to do. And thankfully, we just came into a financial position where I was able to stay home. I ended up getting pregnant again. So I'm at home with my 2 toddlers now, which is just sort of something I've always
kindergarten all over again.
It's kindergarten all over again. It really is. I do have like preschool time. But that was something I had personally always wanted to do, is be able to stay home, so when the opportunity came up, I jumped at it. But, with having the whole Teachers Pay Teachers thing, I haven't decided if I'm going to go back to school or not, because, I miss the kids, but this gives me a way to be involved in something that I love doing and still be involved in education, and I have friends that are teaching still. My old teammate. She still teaches kindergarten in the same school. So I'll give her things, and she'll send me pictures. And so it's kind of like I'm there in the classroom a little bit,
Helping.
Yeah.
You're helping other
Right.
teachers.
Right. And that's part of it too, is that like, if I can provide things that like, you know, even if teachers just don't have the time to create it, because I know what that's like, I mean, if I can provide something that can help and be a comprehensive lesson or unit or activity, that's really where my passion is. And so I felt kind of guilty leaving. I had gotten this college degree. I, had gone through 3 years of teaching by myself, more than that being in the classroom. I was like, I don't want to put it to waste, but I also want to follow my passion. And there was a point where I was very much like, I don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like with Teachers Pay Teachers, it has really allowed me an opportunity to be the stay-at-home mom that I want to be for now and still follow my passion. I love creating curriculum. I love creating activities, and it almost makes me feel like I am back in the classroom and I'm helping teachers.
Well, when you look at it from the perspective of, would you ever be able to do what you're doing now without doing what you had done? You wouldn't be
Right.
able to
That's true.
create effective and efficient and engaging lessons for kindergartners had you not gotten a degree and been in the kindergarten classroom and knowing what they would need.
Right. That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how much time do you dedicate to creating these lessons? And do you just create them for kindergarten, or do you create them for, the primary grades, K-2? Tell me a little bit about that before we jump off here.
So the majority of my products are preschool through second grade. I have a couple things that work for the older grades, but that's really, I mean, even when I was a para, I worked in like kindergarten, preschool through like second grade. So that's really been my area.
I know what you're doing.
Right. And I actually have a friend that teaches fourth grade, and she's like, I can never teach kindergarten. And I'm like, I don't know that I could teach fourth grade. I mean, I feel like some of us have our niches,
For sure. Yeah.
So, it's basically preschool through second. And, it depends on the day, how much time I dedicate with, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old here
Oh
to
my
take
goodness.
care of.
Bless your soul, honey.
But overall, I'd say, I dedicate a good amount of every day. I try to set aside a few hours during nap time to work on curriculums and lessons and things that I'm working on to post into my store. And then I set aside a few hours a day during second nap time to, do social media and like some marketing and stuff like that. It's really working around my kids' schedules, which if you have children, can be not always steady.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing what I can. And, for me, it's really not about the money, that's, it's a nice little side money, but I mean, it's really just about being able to pursue my passion and hopefully help other teachers out there.
So if you were to talk to yourself as a first-year teacher now,
Yeah.
or to other first-year teachers that may be listening, or heck, even 20-plus-year teachers who are really challenging with this narrative that everybody else is doing this, therefore I must also do this. What's your biggest takeaway that you want listeners to take with them today?
Yeah. There's a couple different things. The first thing I would say is don't feel like you have to be in it by yourself. Burnout was extremely isolating. I felt so alone, I would say reach out to your teammates, reach out to your administration, reach out to other teachers, ask them for help with what you need. It's okay to ask for help. You don't have to go into your first year trying to know everything, trying to do everything. Ask for help is the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is know your limits or find them out. We don't always know our limits right away, but you can discover them. I mean, if you're starting to feel tired, you need to honor that, and you need to do something to rest or do something that's a hobby, or, you just need to really, really focus on your physical and mental feelings. How are you feeling, and honor that, and move forward in a way where you're stopping your work, you're doing something to help yourself physically or mentally, and you can come back to whatever you're doing later. And honestly, if those things aren't working for you, I would say that maybe you're not at the right school. I mean, sometimes you have to try different, and I think that goes for any profession. Sometimes
Absolutely.
where you work is not where you should be working. It just doesn't, I tell people this if they're going in for an interview or something, like you can interview them too, because just because they offer you a job doesn't mean that you are a good fit. It doesn't mean that they're a good fit for you, So
And how are you going to know until you're there too?
right. And I think that's a good, rule of thumb with schools too, is that sometimes it's just not a good fit for you, and that's okay. Just because you leave a job, it doesn't necessarily make it bad. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means that maybe it wasn't a right fit, and maybe somewhere else would be better fitted for your needs.
Wonderful advice.
That's what I would say.
All right. Naomi, thank you so much for sharing your story. It sounds like you just learned so much about yourself, not only as a professional, but as a person.
I did. Thank you so much for having me, by the way.
Of course. This is why I do this podcast. I want to hear these stories. I want to empower you to be able to tell your story and therefore empowering others. So
I love it.
Tell everybody how they can find you. Maybe you have a listener here who might be interested in some of your things on Teachers Pay Teachers. So tell us how we can find you on social media and on Teachers Pay Teachers.
Yeah, so my Teachers Pay Teachers store is Busy Little Bees. So you can just search that in Teachers Pay Teachers and find my store. And my Instagram is Busy Little Bees Teacher. There's a period in between every word. Other than that, that's pretty much it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Naomi, for your time and your story and your vulnerability and your lessons.
Yes,
this was
thank you.
You're so welcome. This was a really great interview.
It was. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, you can head over to burnedinteacher.com, where you can access the entire vault of Burned In Teacher podcast episodes and more information about ways I want to help you go from burned out teacher to burned in human. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would be so grateful if you would head over to iTunes and leave a review and a rating about the Burned In Teacher podcast. Until next time, take a deep breath, because you just took another step to becoming a burned in teacher. Burn on.